I was called ungrateful. The words still echo in my mind to this day. It was just an ordinary Sunday, but for me, it would be the day that everything changed. For years, I had been there, helping with every church activity. I remember the smell of coffee wafting from the kitchen as I set up the tables, always with a smile on my face, ready to serve. But no one saw what I was really doing. No one knew that it was my faith that sustained that place. The silence of my dedication seemed invisible, but nothing prepared me for what would happen that afternoon. There was an air of anticipation, and a restlessness started to consume me. I looked around, noticing the conversations, the laughter, and the feeling that I wasn't part of that scene. That day, something inside me began to stir. Then, in the middle of the service, he stood up, the church leader, the one everyone admired, pointed at me and said I was a problem. Time stopped. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. It was as if the walls were closing in, and I was alone in the midst of a crowd. What had I done to deserve this? I just wanted to help, to be part of something bigger, but there I was, exposed and ashamed. But there was something they didn't know. At that moment, something inside me awoke. The pain of rejection mixed with a flame of indignation. What I had done in silence for so long now began to scream inside me. The truth was about to emerge from the darkness. I had been the one sustaining everything in silence, the love I dedicated to that community, the sacrifices I made every day, the prayers I offered. No one knew that each act of kindness I performed was a form of faith, a connection to something greater, but being called a problem made me realize that the light I tried to bring was being extinguished. I learned that silence is the purest form of response. It wasn't about being accepted or recognized. It was about understanding that my dedication didn't need validation from those who couldn't see. From that day on, my faith would no longer be a burden, but a liberation. God knows what is in each person's heart. The pain I felt at that moment was a turning point. I no longer needed approval. The love I sought was within me, and I finally allowed myself to be free. Have you ever gone through that? Have you felt invisible even among many? It's worth reflecting on. Sometimes the worst pain is not being cast out, but realizing that their love was never real. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to see more real stories like this one? There's already another one in the cards. I was called ungrateful. The words still echo in my mind today. It was any given Sunday, but for me, it would be the day that everything changed. For years, I had been present, helping with every activity in the church. I remember the smell of coffee wafting from the kitchen as I set the tables, always with a smile on my face, ready to serve. But no one saw what I really did. No one knew that it was my faith that sustained that place. The silence of my dedication seemed invisible, but nothing prepared me for what would happen that afternoon. There was an air of expectation, and a restlessness began to consume me. I looked around, noticing the conversations, the laughter, and the feeling that I didn't belong in that scene. That day, something inside me began to stir. Then, in the middle of the service, he stood up, the church leader, the one everyone admired, pointed at me and said that I was a problem. Time froze. I felt the ground vanish beneath my feet. It was as if the walls were closing in, and I was alone in the midst of a crowd. What had I done to deserve this? I just wanted to help, to be part of something bigger, but there I was, exposed and ashamed. But there is something they didn't know. At that moment, something inside me awoke. The pain of rejection mixed with a flame of indignation. What I had been doing in silence for so long was now beginning to shout inside me. The truth was about to emerge from the darkness. I was the one silently supporting everything, the love I dedicated to that community, the sacrifices I made every day, the prayers I offered. Nobody knew that each act of kindness I performed was a form of faith, a connection with something greater, but being labeled as a problem made me realize that the light I was trying to bring was being extinguished. I learned that silence is the purest form of response. It wasn't about being accepted or recognized. It was about understanding that my dedication didn't need the validation of those who couldn't see. From that day on, my faith would no longer be a burden but a liberation. God knows what is in each person's heart. The pain I felt at that moment was a watershed. I no longer needed approval. The love I was seeking was within me, and I finally allowed myself to be free. Have you ever gone through this? Have you ever felt invisible, even among so many? It's worth reflecting on. Sometimes, the worst pain is not being cast out but realizing that their love was never real. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to see more real stories like this? There's already another one in the cards. But the truth is that the path to freedom is not easy. In the days that followed, I still felt the weight of that humiliation. Every look, every whisper seemed like an echo of those words. The feeling of being seen only as a problem consumed me. It was a constant internal battle. Every Sunday that passed, I hesitated to return. The fear of being rejected again was immense. But there was something inside me that insisted on continuing. I decided that if I was no longer welcome there, I would not let that define my faith. I began to seek out other spaces, other communities. I went to services in different places, met people who also had their stories of pain and rejection. Gradually, I realized that I was not alone. There were many who, like me, felt invisible, but who also found the strength to stand up. I spoke with a woman who had been expelled from her own congregation for asking an uncomfortable question to the leader. She told me that the pain of rejection was not just about the loss of a place, but about the search for meaning amidst abandonment. That conversation deeply moved me. I began to understand that pain, though difficult, could be a catalyst for transformation. Over time, I realized that my love for faith was not limited to a building or a group of people. It was something much greater, something that lived within me. I began to reconnect with the practices that made me feel alive. Prayer became an intimate dialogue, no longer a ritual of acceptance. The reading of the scriptures turned into a personal quest, where I found comfort and answers to my anxieties. One day, while leafing through an old prayer book, I came across a passage that said, "The love you give is the love you receive." In that instant, I realized that what I lacked was not the acceptance of others, but the acceptance of myself. I needed to learn to love myself, to respect my own path. From that moment on, every act I performed, even in silence, was an act of self-love. Weeks passed, and I allowed myself to feel the freedom to be who I really am. I learned to look inward, to listen to my own voice, and, little by little, the pain of rejection began to transform into strength. I didn't need more validation from a community that didn't recognize my worth. The love I was seeking was manifesting in unexpected ways. I started getting involved in small support groups, where everyone shared their stories of pain and discovery. I met people who, like me, had been marginalized, and each account was an echo of my own experience. I felt welcomed in a space where vulnerability was embraced, where being imperfect was the norm. The connection I was looking for was there, not in a temple, but in hearts beating with similar stories. One night, during one of these meetings, a young woman shared her battle with faith and doubt. She talked about how her quest for answers led her to question everything she had ever believed. I remembered myself, the nights when I wondered if there was something wrong with me for not feeling at home in the church, and it was there that I realized we were not alone. Our collective pain was a testimony to the search for authenticity in a world that often prefers silence over truth. With each encounter, I felt stronger and more connected. I learned that each of us brings a unique light, and that even in the midst of darkness, this light can shine brightly. I began to realize that the rejection I experienced was not a reflection of my worth, but rather others' inability to recognize the diversity of faith and spirituality. The pain taught me to value the beauty of difference, and this new perspective brought deep relief. Yet, the memories of what happened in the church still haunted me. Sometimes, the image of the leader pointing at me as a problem would resurface, bringing up feelings of indignation. I knew I needed to confront this pain in a non-destructive way. I decided to write a letter. Not a letter to send, but a letter to myself, where I could express everything I felt, without censorship. While writing, words that once seemed trapped in my chest began to flow. I wrote about the pain, the betrayal I felt, but also about the strength that emerged from that experience. I was challenged to recognize that my faith did not need to be tied to a physical place or to people who did not see my worth. Each word I put on paper became a step towards healing. The letter became an act of liberation, a testimony of my journey. In fact, this process of writing made me realize that I had a powerful story to tell. A story that could inspire others who also felt invisible. I began to share excerpts of my letter on a blog I created. With each post, more people connected with my account. Comments of support and identification began to emerge, and I realized there was a space for my voice to be heard. One day, upon reading a message from a young woman who thanked me for sharing my story, I felt a wave of gratitude. She wrote that she felt alone and lost, but that my words helped her find a bit of hope. At that moment, I understood that my pain had a purpose: to help others recognize that they were not alone in their struggle. The cycle completed itself. By sharing my journey, I was also healing myself. Over time, the community I had lost began to turn into something new. It wasn't the same church as before, but a network of people who supported each other in their struggles and victories. I started participating in informal gatherings, where spirituality was celebrated in an inclusive and welcoming manner. In these spaces, discussions about faith were open and honest. And vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. I remember a night when, around a campfire, we all shared our experiences of rejection and acceptance. The flames danced, reflecting the light of each story. Listening to others, I realized that the pain that once seemed unbearable had turned into a bridge for connection. Each of us was a beacon, illuminating each other's paths. The sense of belonging that I had sought for so long was finally within my reach. Still, the journey did not end. With each step, I found new layers of my own faith to explore. I began to venture into spiritual practices I had always wanted to try but never allowed myself to because of the fear of judgment: meditation, yoga, nature walks. All of this became part of my path of self-discovery. Spirituality, which was once a burden, now transformed into a space of freedom and expression. Looking back, I realized that the rejection I experienced was painful but also transformative. Each tear shed became a seed of self-knowledge, and each wound, an opportunity for growth. I learned that true faith is not confined to rituals or a physical space. It pulses within us, guiding us through the darkest moments. In one of those moments of self-discovery, I found a practice that captivated me: writing. At first, it was just an outpouring in a journal. I wrote about my experiences, about the pain of rejection, but also about the small victories that began to emerge. With each page, I felt I was reconnecting with my essence, allowing my voice to finally be heard. Over time, that practice turned into something more. I started writing stories and reflections about my journey, exploring themes that once seemed distant: loneliness, the search for belonging, transformation through of the pain. All of this became part of a narrative I was building, and as I wrote, I felt the pain become less heavy. I was giving life to something that could resonate with others. It was during one of those writing nights that I decided to share one of my texts in an online group. It was a welcoming space where people gathered to share experiences and support each other. When I posted my story about rejection, my heart was racing. I knew I was exposing myself, but I also felt it was a necessary step. The responses started arriving almost immediately: messages of support, identification, and even gratitude flooded my screen. One woman wrote that she had gone through a similar experience and felt encouraged to share her own story. In that moment, I realized that my pain was not just mine. It was an echo of many struggles. The connection that formed there was powerful and healing. As the weeks went by, the group became a home for me. Each meeting, even if virtual, was a safe space where we could be vulnerable and authentic. The stories we shared were like lights illuminating the dark parts of our souls. There, I was no longer a stranger. I was part of a community that supported each other, where everyone brought their own light. There was comfort in knowing I was not alone. Sometimes, I would find myself remembering the moments when I felt invisible, and the comparison between those days and now was immense. The love I had always sought from outside now manifested in every interaction. In every act of support, I allowed myself to experience the beauty of human connection, and that was liberating. One night, during a group conversation, someone raised the issue of forgiveness. How do we forgive those who have hurt us? The question hung in the air. I looked at the screen, thinking about everything I had been through. I didn't have the answers easy, but I knew that the journey of healing also involved forgiveness, not just for others, but for myself. I needed to forgive myself for allowing the pain to define me. In that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not an act of weakness, but one of strength. It was a gift I could give myself, a step towards freedom. I began to reflect on what that meant. I didn't need to forget what happened, but I could choose not to let it imprison me. Forgiveness then became a daily practice, a way to free myself from the chains that bound me to the past. Gradually, my journey of self-discovery began to expand. I ventured into new experiences. Something that had been stifled for so long. I went to spiritual retreats, participated in art workshops, and even tried dancing under the stars. Each new experience was like a brush stroke on the canvas of my life, and I began to see a vibrant picture full of possibilities forming before me. One of the most remarkable experiences was when I decided to return to that church, but not as a participant, rather as an observer. I was nervous, but at the same time eager to see what had changed within me. Upon entering, I realized that I was no longer the same person who had been expelled. I had grown, learned, and transformed. The space seemed different, but more importantly, I was different as well. I sat in a corner, observing the interactions around me. The smell of coffee was still in the air, but now it had a different meaning. I was no longer there seeking validation, but to witness the life that pulsed in that place. I saw people interacting, smiling, and I realized that each of them had their own story, their own struggles and triumphs. The pain I once felt seemed distant, as if I were watching a movie from another life. And then I sat in a corner, observing the interactions around me. The smell of coffee was still in the air, but now it had a different meaning. I was no longer there seeking validation, but to witness the life pulsing in that place. I saw people interacting, smiling, and I realized that each of them had their own stories, their own struggles and achievements. The pain I once felt seemed distant, as if I were watching a movie from another life. And then, while observing everything, a young woman approached me. She seemed nervous, her eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Hi, are you new here?" she asked, breaking the silence that surrounded me. I looked into her eyes and saw a reflection of my own. Insecurity? Actually, no. I've been here before, but it's been a while, I replied, trying to ease the tension between us. The conversation flowed naturally, and soon we were sharing our experiences and feelings. That instant connection made me realize that, even amidst the pain, there was room for new beginnings. As we talked, I remembered how, in my past, I used to feel like I didn't have a voice, that I wasn't worthy of being heard. But there I was, having a true conversation, without masks, just two people trying to understand the world around them. The young woman told me she had recently moved to the city and was still struggling to feel part of the community. "Sometimes, I feel like no one notices me, like I'm invisible," she said with a sigh that carried a familiar weight. That sentence resonated with me, like an echo of what I had also felt. "You are not alone," I responded sincerely. "A lot of people feel exactly that way." After that conversation, something awakened in me. I realized that I was not just a passive spectator of life. I had the power to be a voice of encouragement for those who felt the way I used to feel. I decided that I wanted to be a support, a welcoming presence for anyone who was facing the same loneliness I knew so well. From that day on, I began to get more actively involved in church activities, but this time with a new perspective. I didn't just help, I listened, welcomed, and connected. As time went by, I realized that many other people were also on the sidelines, struggling with their own stories of rejection and pain. I started organizing small informal gatherings, where everyone could share their experiences without fear of judgment. It was a safe space where each person could be authentic and vulnerable. I wanted those who walked through that door to know that there was love and understanding, that they didn't have to carry their pain alone. The gatherings became a success. The room that was once filled with unfamiliar faces now buzzed with laughter and sincere conversations. What began as a simple desire for welcoming turned into a vibrant community where people could support each other. Each shared story was like a balm for wounds, and with each meeting, love and connection grew. I realized that the pain I had experienced was not in vain. It had become a catalyst for something beautiful and transformative. There was a young man who, in one of these meetings, shared that he had been expelled from his former congregation for questioning dogmas that didn't make sense to him. He spoke with such passion, and I could feel the pain of his rejection in every word. "I feel like I've lost my faith," he said, his voice breaking. I looked around and saw empathy on everyone's faces. "Faith is not a fixed space," I replied. "It is a journey, and each of us has the right to walk it authentically." The silence that followed was loaded with understanding, and there, in that moment, the pain transformed into hope. Over time, more people began to join us, and the community grew. There was something magical about seeing those who once felt invisible now coming together and supporting each other. I wasn't just helping people find their place. I was helping them rediscover their voices. Each of us had a unique light, and together, we illuminated each other's paths. In that welcoming environment, I decided it was time to share my story. I wanted others to know they weren't alone. That pain could be a starting point for self-discovery. At one of the meetings, I asked to speak. My heart was racing, but I was determined. I am proof that rejection doesn't have to be the end. I began, and as I spoke, the words flowed like a river. I shared my journey, from the pain of expulsion to the discovery of self-love and the strength that emerged from my vulnerability. When I finished, the room was silent, but not a heavy silence. It was a silence filled with understanding. I looked around and saw tears in some people's eyes, not of sadness, but of recognition. What I had shared resonated with each of them, as if my words had sparked a flame of hope. There, in that moment, I realized my suffering had a greater purpose: to help others feel seen and heard. One of the women, who had been silent until then, raised her hand. "Thank you for sharing that," she said, her voice trembling. I was also called ungrateful, and it hurt me deeply. I didn't know anyone else felt what I felt. Her words opened the floodgates, and the stories began to flow. Everyone had an experience to share, and each account was a testament to the power of vulnerability. What was once a place of pain now became a place of healing. The young man who had spoken about losing his faith stood up again. "I always thought I needed to fit into a mold, that there was something wrong with me for not believing exactly the same way as others. But now I realize that faith is not a formula, it is a journey." His words echoed in the room, and I saw heads nodding in agreement. It was a collective revelation, a release of a burden that many carried. With each meeting, the space became more vibrant. People started bringing their stories, their struggles, and their victories. Each of us was becoming a beacon, lighting the way for others. It was as if together, we were creating a new kind of community, one that was not based on dogmas or rigid rules, but on love and genuine acceptance. I felt grateful to be part of something so special. Meanwhile, my writing practice continued to evolve. I spent hours scribbling in my journal, exploring the nuances of my journey and reflecting on the lessons I learned each day. Writing became a form of meditation, a space where I could process emotions and give voice to feelings that had previously been trapped. I found that sharing these reflections on my blog not only helped me but also connected with other people who were going through similar experiences. One day, when I opened my email, I found a message that deeply touched me. It was from a man who had read one of my texts and felt compelled to write. He told me that he had distanced himself from the church after a painful experience of rejection, and that after reading my story, he felt the courage to return and reconnect with his faith. "I realized I don't need to hide," he wrote. "Your story gave me hope." As I finished reading, tears streamed down my face. The pain that once paralyzed me was now transforming into a source of inspiration and hope for others. That same week, I decided to organize a special event. It would be a night of stories and sharing, where people could come and tell their experiences of pain and overcoming. The idea was simple but powerful: to create a safe space where everyone could open up and be vulnerable. Thus, I began to promote the event on social media and among the people I knew in the community. On the night of the event, the space was packed. The human warmth and expectation were palpable. People sat in circles, and the atmosphere was welcoming. When it started, I asked everyone to introduce themselves, and so the stories began to be told. Some were short, others long, but each carried an emotional weight that united us all. With each story, I felt the energy of the place transforming, as if we were weaving a tapestry of human experiences. One man shared how rejection had led him to isolate himself, to lose faith in himself. With each word, I saw the pain reflected on the faces around me. But at the end of his story, he brought a message of hope, talking about how, by opening up to new experiences, he found a new form of spirituality that included the acceptance of his true essence. Hearing this, many began to get emotional, and I realized that we were all on the same journey. At the end of the night, there was a moment of silence. A woman started singing a song about acceptance and love. The melody was soft and touching, and soon others joined her. The sound of the music filled the space, and the voices intertwined like a collective hug. It was a moment of pure connection. I got lost in the music, feeling that each note was resonating with the transformation we were all experiencing. From that night on, the group became a reference point in the community. People began to gather regularly, not only to share stories but also to celebrate the small victories of the day. We created a space where vulnerability was the norm, where each of us shared the experiences we were going through. Each meeting was an opportunity not only to vent but also to learn from each other. The space became a home where pain was shared and joys were celebrated. I began to notice that each of us brought with us a unique story, a background loaded with challenges and achievements that, when shared, became a source of strength. Once, a young man who usually sat quietly at the back of the room decided to open up. He spoke about how he had been rejected by his family when he revealed his sexual orientation. Tears streamed down his face as he shared the pain of not being accepted. The empathy in the air was palpable, and there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. When he finished, there was a moment of silence, and then everyone started applauding. That was our way of showing that he was seen, heard, and loved. That moment of vulnerability turned into a powerful act of courage that inspired others to share their own stories. With each meeting, the connections deepened. We began to do sharing exercises, where each person had the chance to speak freely, without interruptions. The rule was simple: listen with your heart. There was something magical about seeing how voices that were once silent now echoed with strength. Often, someone would start sharing a pain that seemed unbearable, but by the end of the story, we found a space of healing and acceptance together. Once, we decided to organize an art night. Each of us brought something meaningful: paintings, poems, photographs, any form of expression that could capture our experiences. When I saw the creations from others, I was impressed with the depth and beauty that emerged from the wounds. Each piece was a statement of resilience, a celebration of a life that flourished despite the difficulties. That night, I realized that art had the power to heal, to transform pain into something beautiful. I remember a woman who brought a poem she had written years ago, when she was still struggling to find her place in the world. As she read it, her voice trembled, but there was an undeniable strength in her words. The poem spoke about the search for acceptance and the fight against loneliness. At the end of the reading, she looked at all of us and said, "This poem was written for me, but today, I share it with you because I realize I am no longer alone." The room filled with applause. But more importantly, there was a profound sense of unity. Each of us was becoming part of a collective story of overcoming. Over time, the idea of creating a physical space for our community began to take shape. I dreamed of a place where we could gather, not just to share the pains, but also to celebrate the victories, learn together, and grow. A space where spirituality wouldn't be defined by dogma, but by love and acceptance. I began talking to some of the members about this idea, and the response was unanimous. Everyone was willing to help make this dream a reality. So, we started planning. We organized meetings to discuss what we wanted this space to represent. Each person brought their ideas, hopes, and fears. It was exciting to see how the vision of a safe and welcoming place started to take shape. We decided the space would have areas for meditation, art, reading, and, of course, a cozy corner for sharing stories. The goal was to create an environment that reflected the diversity of our community. But like any dream, there were challenges. Finding a suitable place wasn't easy. We spent hours researching, visiting spaces, and talking to owners. At one low point, we almost gave up. But something always pulled us back. We felt that it was more than just a physical space. It was the realization of a deep desire for belonging and acceptance. Finally, we found a small building that needed a lot of work but had a special energy. When we walked in, we all felt it. It was as if that place had been waiting for us. The energy of the space seemed to pulse, and soon we came together to start transforming it. Each of us brought our skills, from painting to carpentry, and together, we began to build our home. As we worked, the bonds between us grew stronger, laughter and music filled the air, and the sense of community intensified. Each wall we painted, each piece of furniture we assembled, was a celebration of our journey. We felt that we were creating more than just a physical space. We were shaping a refuge for those who, like us, sought a place where they could be authentic and free. During the process, an idea emerged to create a mural that reflected all of our stories. The proposal was for each person to contribute something that symbolized their journey. So, we began to collect images, words, and symbols that represented our experiences. The mural was becoming a kind of emotional map, a testament to the resilience and hope that we shared. Each of us had the opportunity to add something that represented a part of our story, and with each new element added, we felt the strength of our connection intensify. It was as if, together, we were writing a new narrative, one that wasn't based on pain, but on overcoming and acceptance. One of the participants brought an old photograph from her childhood, where she was surrounded by friends. This image represents what I always wanted, a place where I could be myself, without fear of being judged, she said, her eyes shining, hearing her words. I realized that this search for belonging was a pain shared by many. Each story brought to the mural revealed a layer of vulnerability and, at the same time, an unshakable strength. As the mural came to life, we also began to plan an opening ceremony. The idea was to celebrate not just the space, but the journey we had all taken to get there. We wanted the community to feel that this place was a reflection of all of us, a space where every voice mattered, and every story was valid. The anticipation grew, and with each passing day, more people showed interest in joining us. During the week of the inauguration, the atmosphere was one of excitement. Everyone gathered to prepare the space, decorating every corner with flowers, lights, and the creations they had made for the mural. The energy was palpable, and I felt a mixture of nervousness and joy. It was a moment of realization, to see what we had built together, not only in terms of walls and paint but in terms of community and connection. On the night of the inauguration, the place was full. Laughter and conversations echoed, and the atmosphere was one of celebration. When I looked around, I realized that those people, who once felt invisible, were now part of something bigger. A group of young people started playing guitar and singing songs about love and acceptance, the voices intertwined, creating a symphony of hope. It was beautiful to see how music could unite people in such a profound way. During the celebration, I invited everyone to gather in a circle. I wanted each person to have the opportunity to share something about the mural, a word, a phrase, or even an emotion. When the first person got up to speak, a respectful silence fell over the space. He began to talk about his experience of rejection and how that mural represented not only his wounds but also his healing. With each story, I felt the connection growing stronger. The pain was no longer a solitary burden but a bridge that united us. At the end of the night, a woman stood up and, with a choked voice, said, "The pain we carry can be heavy, but here, in this space, we find a place where we can let it go. Here, we are seen and heard." Her words echoed in my heart. That was exactly what we had created, a refuge where everyone could be authentic, and where vulnerability was not a sign of weakness but a source of strength. But, as time went by, I realized that the journey of healing was not a final destination but a continuous process. There were moments when memories of rejection and pain still came back, like shadows trying to infiltrate the light we had built. On some nights, as I lay down, I felt the anxiety of the past approaching again. It was a reminder that healing was not linear but full of ups and downs. I decided that I needed to be honest about this with the group. During one of our meetings, I shared how, even amid so many achievements, there were still days when the pain visited me. Sometimes I feel like I'm taking steps backward, and it scares me, I confessed, hearing those words. I saw faces light up with understanding. I was not alone in this internal battle, and many were also struggling with the same insecurities. A young man raised his hand and said, "It's normal to have bad days. The important thing is that we are in this together. We can be a support for each other." His words brought a relief I didn't expect. At that moment, I realized that the community we had created was not just to celebrate victories, but also to welcome wounds. It was a safe space where each person could be truthful about their struggles. We began to incorporate moments of vulnerability into our meetings. Instead of just sharing stories of overcoming, we started making space to talk about the difficulties we were still facing. It was an invitation for each person to be authentic, and this strengthened our bonds even more. The pain that once seemed lonely was now shared, and the connection between us grew deeper and deeper. Over time, the mural evolved into a true collaborative work of art, reflecting each of our journeys. Each new addition was a testament to the resilience and hope that emerged from our shared experiences. One day, we decided it was important to organize an exhibition to show the mural to the entire community, not just those who were already part of our group, but also to those who still felt on the margins. We wanted to open the doors and show that pain can be transformed into beauty, and that everyone has a story worth telling. The preparation for the exhibition was a moment of great excitement. Each of us got involved in the organization, from decorating the space to choosing the music that would play during the event. It was an opportunity to celebrate not only what we had built together but also to invite others to join us. The day of the exhibition arrived, and the atmosphere was charged with expectation. When people started to arrive, the space was filled with laughter, hugs, and warm conversations. It was as if, for the first time, we were truly showing the world the strength of our union. While the guests admired the mural, I saw familiar and unfamiliar faces light up as they recognized parts of their own stories reflected in the images and words adorning the wall. A young man approached me, with tears in his eyes, and said, "I thought I was alone in this struggle, but now I see that I am not." I felt a wave of emotion upon hearing that. It was exactly what we wanted to convey. The message that pain and struggle do not need to be faced alone. The connection we had cultivated was expanding and touching others. At a special moment, we decided to open the microphone so that those who wanted to share their stories could do so. An elderly man stood up, and his trembling voice echoed through the room. He began to tell about his youth, when he was rejected by his own family for being different. His words were heavy, but at the same time, there was a raw beauty in the way he spoke about his journey of acceptance. With each sentence, the room was filled with understanding and empathy. When he finished, the entire room stood and applauded, not only in recognition of his courage but also for the power of the vulnerability he had brought to that space. That became a moment of transformation not just for him, but for all of us. I learned that by allowing others to share their experiences, we were creating a space where pain became a catalyst for healing. The stories began to flow, and each account seemed to draw a new path to acceptance and love. A woman stood up and spoke about how her struggle with depression had distanced her from her spirituality. By sharing her experience, she brought to light the importance of recognizing that emotional struggles are part of the journey of faith and not something to be hidden. After the exhibition, people started gathering more frequently, not only to share stories but also to support each other in times of difficulty. The group became a safe haven where everyone could open up about their daily struggles. We began creating small support groups where we could discuss topics that were often considered taboo, such as mental health, acceptance, and the search for purpose. These deep conversations brought us even closer together and helped us understand that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. However, even amid this new phase of growth, I still faced personal challenges. On some nights, when loneliness became oppressive, I found myself questioning whether I had truly overcome the pain of the past. It was a reminder that healing is not a destination, but a continuous journey. In one of those moments, I decided that I needed to reconnect with writing. I took out my journal, and as I wrote, the words flowed, and I realized that writing had always been my refuge. It was where I could process my feelings. And before you leave, do two things now. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive future messages, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. To continue, watch the next video. It's already in the cards and also in the description.